Welcome to History with Herodotus, where the past comes alive through the power of storytelling and the rigor of historical inquiry. Today, we embark on a fascinating journey to explore one of the most pivotal events in European history, the Spanish Armada. This epic tale of naval warfare, diplomatic intrigue, and national pride will transport us to the high seas, the royal courts of 16th century Europe, and the hearts of the men who shaped the course of history. As we set sail on this narrative voyage, let us begin by examining the complex web of alliances, rivalries, and interests that ultimately led to the launching of the Spanish Armada. In the late 16th century, the Iberian Peninsula was a hotbed of maritime power, with Portugal and Spain vying for dominance over the oceans and the riches they promised. The Spanish Empire, under the rule of King Philip II, had established itself as a major force in European politics, with a vast network of territories, colonies, and trade routes that spanned the globe. At the heart of this imperial powerhouse was the monarch himself, Philip II, a man of unwavering conviction and unrelenting ambition. Born in 1527, Philip was the son of Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, and had inherited not only his father's territories, but also his sense of destiny and duty to spread Catholicism and Spanish influence across the world. With his imposing presence, sharp intellect, and mastery of statecraft, Philip II would stop at nothing to assert Spain's supremacy over its rivals, particularly England, which had emerged as a thorn in the side of Spanish dominance. The English monarchy, under the rule of Queen Elizabeth I, had been a persistent challenge to Spanish authority, with its support for Dutch rebels, its raids on Spanish shipping, and its refusal to recognize Philip's claim to the English throne. Elizabeth, the enigmatic and cunning Virgin Queen, had navigated the treacherous waters of European politics with remarkable skill, forging alliances, manipulating public opinion, and inspiring loyalty among her subjects. As the years went by, the tensions between Spain and England continued to escalate, fueled by a toxic mix of religious animosity, economic rivalry, and nationalist fervor. One of the key events that would ultimately contribute to the outbreak of war was the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, in 1587. A Catholic claimant to the English throne, Mary had been a focal point for Spanish hopes of restoring Catholicism in England, and her brutal death at the hands of Elizabeth's executioners sparked outrage across Europe. The incident also galvanized Philip II's determination to invade England, punish Elizabeth for her perceived transgressions, and restore the Catholic faith to the island nation. As the drums of war beat louder, a brilliant and ambitious Spanish admiral, Alonso Pérez de Guzmán, 7th Duke of Medina Sidonia, began to take center stage. A scion of one of Spain's most noble families, Medina Sidonia was a skilled military leader, an experienced sailor, and a devout Catholic who saw the impending conflict as a holy war against the forces of heresy and Protestantism. The months leading up to the launch of the Spanish Armada were marked by frantic preparations as shipwrights, sailors, and soldiers worked tirelessly to assemble the largest naval force the world had ever seen. The port city of Lisbon was abuzz with activity, as vessels of all shapes and sizes were readied for battle, their holds filled with guns, ammunition, food, and water. Meanwhile, in the corridors of power, diplomats and strategists engaged in a delicate ballet of alliances, trying to secure support from other European powers, while also navigating the treacherous waters of Spanish politics. As the summer of 1588 approached, the Spanish Armada, now a formidable force of 130 ships, including 22 galleons, 108 armed merchant vessels, and 4 Neapolitan galleys, set sail from the port of Lisbon on May 28. The fleet was crewed by over 25,000 men, including seasoned sailors, soldiers, and noblemen, all driven by a shared sense of purpose and devotion to their king and their faith. Medina Sidonia, resplendent in his finery, stood at the helm of its flagship, the São Martinho, as the Armada navigated the treacherous waters of the Iberian Peninsula, bound for the English Channel. The journey was not without its challenges, as the fleet faced fierce storms and rough seas, which tested the mettle of even the most seasoned sailors. On June 19th, the Armada dropped anchor off the coast of Corunna, where it waited for several weeks, allowing the ships to repair and resupply. It was during this period that Medina Sidonia received news of the English fleet's disposition, which had been gathered by Spanish spies and scouts. The English Navy, under the command of Lord Howard of Effingham and Sir Francis Drake, consisted of approximately 197 ships, including 34 warships, but it lacked the heavy firepower and manpower of the Spanish Armada. As the Spanish fleet set sail once more, it formed a crescent-shaped formation, with the galleons at the center, protected by the armed merchant vessels on either flank. This formation, known as the Spanish Crescent, was designed to present a wall of guns to the enemy, while also allowing the Spanish ships to bring their broadsides to bear on any attacker. On July 19th, the Armada sailed into the English Channel, where it was met by a fleet of English ships which had been waiting in ambush off the coast of Plymouth. The first engagement between the two fleets took place on July 20th, when a group of English ships, including the Golden Lion and the Triumph, attacked a straggling Spanish vessel, the Nuestra Señora del Rosario. The Spanish ship was badly damaged, but it managed to limp back to the safety of the main fleet. Over the next few days, the two fleets clashed repeatedly, with the English employing their superior speed and maneuverability to launch hit-and-run attacks on the slower and more cumbersome Spanish galleons. One notable incident occurred on July 23rd, when a group of English ships, including the Revenge and the Garland, attacked the Spanish flagship, the São Martinho. Medina Sidonia, undaunted by the ferocity of the attack, stood on the quarterdeck of his ship, directing the defense of his vessel with calm and precision. As the English ships closed in, the Spanish gunners unleashed a withering broadside, which sent the Revenge crashing into the Garland, causing significant damage to both vessels. As the battle raged on, the Spanish Armada began to take heavy losses, with several ships being sunk or captured by the English. The Spanish sailors and soldiers fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered and outgunned, and their ships were no match for the faster and more agile English vessels. On July 27th, the Spanish fleet anchored off the coast of Gravelines, where it was subjected to a devastating bombardment by the English Navy. The English guns pounded the Spanish ships relentlessly, causing widespread destruction and chaos. The Spanish gunners returned fire, but their shots were largely ineffective against the more nimble English vessels. As the battle drew to a close, Medina Sidonia realized that his fleet was in danger of being annihilated, and he ordered his ships to weigh anchor and make for the open sea. As the Spanish fleet retreated from the English Channel, it was forced to navigate the treacherous waters of the North Sea, where it faced further challenges from the harsh weather and the pursuing English Navy. The Armada's formation was broken, and many ships were scattered or sunk, leaving Medina Sidonia with a dwindling fleet and limited options. On July 31st, the Spanish ships anchored off the coast of Norway, where they attempted to regroup and repair their damaged vessels. However, the English Navy continued to harass the Spanish fleet, and on August 2nd, a group of English ships attacked the Spanish galleon, the São Mateus, which was forced to surrender. The Spanish sailors and soldiers were taken prisoner, and many were later exchanged for English prisoners held in Spain. As the Armada continued its journey north, it encountered even more severe weather, with strong winds and massive waves that further depleted its numbers. By the time the Spanish fleet reached the coast of Scotland, it had lost over 50 ships and thousands of men, either killed or captured by the English or succumbed to the harsh conditions at sea. The Armada's flagship, the São Martinho, was one of the few remaining vessels, and Medina Sidonia was forced to abandon his plans to invade England and instead focus on survival. As the Spanish fleet sailed around the north of Scotland, it was met with fierce storms that further ravaged its ranks. In the words of a Spanish sailor who survived the ordeal, "The sea was so rough that it seemed as if the waves were going to swallow us whole, and the winds were so strong that they threatened to tear our sails apart." The Armada's struggles at sea were a testament to the bravery and resilience of its sailors and soldiers, who faced unimaginable hardships in their quest to fulfill their mission. The Spanish Armada finally returned to Spain in October 1588, with only about 60 ships remaining from the original fleet of over 130 vessels. The expedition had been a disaster, with thousands of lives lost and a massive financial burden imposed on the Spanish treasury. Philip II was devastated by the news, and his plans for invading England were put on hold indefinitely. Despite its failure, the Spanish Armada had a lasting impact on European history. It marked a significant shift in the balance of power between Spain and England, with the latter emerging as a major naval force. The Armada's defeat also led to a period of English supremacy at sea, which would last for centuries. As historian Garrett Mattingly once noted, the defeat of the Armada was a turning point in the history of the Western world, marking the beginning of England's rise to greatness and Spain's decline into obscurity. Today, the Spanish Armada is remembered as one of the most significant naval battles in history, a testament to the bravery and cunning of the sailors and soldiers who fought on both sides. The Armada's legacy can be seen in the many museums and historical sites that commemorate its story, from the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich to the Armada Shipwreck Museum in Sligo, Ireland. The Spanish Armada's place in history is a reminder of the complex and often fraught nature of international relations, where the pursuit of power and prestige can lead to conflict and tragedy. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, remember that, to understand the present, we must first understand the past.